using examples from their works stewarding long-lived games like Magic, The Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons. Together, Wizards of the Coast's Alan Field, VP of User Acquisition and Digital Marketing, and Michelle Satterfield, Community Manager, tried to share useful advice specifically for small to mid-sized devs and influencers who want community building tips. From the beginning we have built about community and fellowship. Satterfield. Historically, our big products have brought people around a table to play a game together. He reminded folks in the audience that while Wizards has been managing Magic for 25 years and D for over 20, the company just last year released a big, free-to-play video game, Magic, The Gathering Arena. The meat of the talk was how Wizards has expanded its community by growing the number of streamers and other influencers playing in it, but Field first took a minute to highlight the company's history of trying to support unique playstyles and communities. From the very beginning, we had a sort of homebrew culture developed among our players. He said, homebrew has been around in the PC world for a long time, with modding cultures, and with our physical card game, with that very early on. Field thinks one of what smart community building moves early on was to invest in tournaments and pro leagues, as well as more casual community events, like Friday Night Magic, a formalized system for novice to intermediate players to play together at local game shops or other spaces. Physical game shops have always been key to Wizards' success, and Field thinks that's because they create unique hubs where players can check out new games, participate in special events, and hopefully offer unique cultures and vibes that make players feel welcome. A lot of the things that make game shops successful make influencers successful. Now, he suggests that big Twitch streamers and YouTubers can offer something similar to their audiences, albeit at a distance. The feeling of being part of a community and of sharing your passion for a game and its systems with a bunch of other people. A lot of the things that make game shops successful make influencers successful. Satterfield. Having a variety of programming, having programming of different skill levels, and this sense of homebrew culture. Satterfield then took the stage to talk a bit about how she chooses which influencers to work with on a game mechanic, and what other devs can learn from Wizards' experience. When we look for influencers, we do not just look for people with the most views on Twitch, she said. Those things are great and we still look for them, but our deciding factor is which influencers can we work with that will influence our community to be a better place, and to be more involved. You need to care more about your streamers. She says they look for passionate players who are passionate not just about the game, but about the brand and the community around it. Often this means working with what she calls micro-influencers, basically just up-and-coming streamers, or other content creators who have not built a big audience yet. When we use micro-influencers, we get so much more than just using top-tier influencers alone, Satterfield said, noting that a good mix of such micro-influencers can bring you just as much, if not more, attention as if you did just talk to the people with big audiences, and the smaller streamers can often inject their own beneficial mix of personality and community. According to Satterfield, these smaller influencers can also be a boon for small to mid-sized developers, because they are often more invested in your game than a big-time streamer. So much so they may even, if you are comfortable with it, be willing to stream it without being paid. I work with like thousands of streamers, you know, and building those relationships is very important, because we can get so much more out of our events. Sutterfield added. We had 500 streamers be part of a recent early access event to promote new content, and none of them were paid. They did it because they love the game, they love the event, and they love the community. Sutterfield said she was able to create a Discord for the streamers and let them loose to share stories, network, and get excited about the game, and that in turn led to more excited streams. Above all, Sutterfield's advice for devs looking to build healthy relationships with streamers and influencers is to treat them like human beings rather than paid marketing megaphones. If there's one thing you should take away from this talk, it's this: you need to care more about your streamers. She said, when you have happy streamers, you have those happy relationships, you will get so much more than you could ever imagine. But just to be thorough, she summed up her advice for fellow game makers in 5 points. The data shows it works. She said, in closing, we grew in it over 400% in a year, in terms of unique streamers, and they grew with us. This interview is part of our Road to EF series. You can find the rest by clicking here. Ato's Odyssey takes players on a stunning sandboarding journey across shifting sands, gliding across striking landscapes and beautiful backdrops that hint at a world of stories beyond the dunes. Gamasutra sat down with Harry Nesbitt, lead artist and programmer of the Excellence in Visual Art, nominated Ato's Odyssey, to talk about the thoughts behind the game's art style, how its minimalism helps players bring their own creativity to the game, and hinting at larger stories through visuals. My name is Harry Nesbitt, and I am the lead artist and programmer for Ato's Odyssey. I did not get into games until fairly recently. Ato's Adventure was actually my first experience working as a game developer. Before that, I was working mainly as a freelance illustrator and designer, but I have always had an interest in art and technology and the way they intersect, so making the jump to games was actually quite a seamless transition. It's a medium I could not be happier to be working in. Following Ato's adventure with a game set in the desert was something that naturally suggested itself quite early on, even before we finished the first game. The real challenge came from trying to reconsider the game's mechanics and ask ourselves what was integral to the overall experience, and what we could iterate and improve on for the next game. We were also keen to avoid any typical desert cliches and be respectful of the environments and cultures we were drawing from. The game is built with Unity, which is an integral part of our toolset, and allows us to make games in the way we do. Neither myself, nor my colleague Joe Granger, have a formal background in computer science, so the prospects of having to build and maintain our own game engine would be prohibitively difficult, especially for such a small team. Off-the-shelf engines like Unity and Unreal have all along WAYTOWAODS, democratizing the art of making games, allowing a much broader range of would-be developers to try their hand at creating something personal to them without the barriers to entry that might have existed a decade ago. We have always wanted to try to make the player feel like they are just a tiny part of a much larger world. In many ways, the game's environments are the main character, with Ato and the gang being secondary to that. We actively try to avoid showing the characters too much in our marketing material for this reason. We hope this allows anyone to be able to project themselves into the world and feel like they are experiencing their own adventure, as opposed to one depicted for them. The procedural aspect of the series is ultimately what allowed us to ship a game that could even hope to stand alongside others with larger budgets are more experienced teams. We are able to focus our efforts on refining a core set of rules that generate a seemingly large experience from a relatively small number of assets, and can be refined throughout development. It also means that no two players' experiences will ever be the same, with all the game's overlapping systems working together to create an infinite number of unique possibilities. The key focus when designing the game's content was to try to make everything feel as natural as possible, with a sense of balance and flow. We mix a lot of procedural content with handcrafted sequences in order to punctuate the random nature of the game and give players memorable moments in each. However, it's also important to ensure these bespoke sequences do not draw too much attention to themselves or appear too frequently, as they can quickly become tiresome and stand out for the wrong reasons. To combat this, we sprinkled the game with a lot of subtle, understated moments to help balance things out. There's definitely a distinct rhythm to the gameplay that took time to get right.